Thank you for attending my presentation on how loot works in Apex Legends. You would think that for one of the game's core mechanics this would be explained somewhere in the game, but since it's not, I've decided to take it upon myself to do it on my own. So where do we start? Well, to begin with, not all loot in this game is created equally. Different areas on the map will generate different qualities of loot. The game does actually tell you this. You see this text to ignore every time? That's what it's for. More significant areas on the map will generate higher quality loot. Most of the time. See, the text that I mentioned doesn't actually mean anything and is just straight up wrong half the time. The loot zones are drawn behind the scenes as invisible circles on the map, and we can see this by looking into the game using programs like Legion or by using this publicly available map on ALS. Thank you, Hugo. Most of the loot in the game will fall into three nice categories: medium and high tier zones, which are represented as blue and purple respectively, and low tier, which is just anywhere else on the map. Obviously, the no-name areas are low tier, named POIs are medium, and important areas are high tier. Psych, Respawn hates logic. In reality, this no-name by Fragment gets medium tier, Fragment itself gets low tier, and Dome gets high tier. It's mostly one zone per POI, however there are some POIs that get split up. Here are a few examples. There are some other oddities, but we're going to come back to them later. I'm looking at you labs, just what the fuck is going on over there? Knowing that the loot in different areas is different is great and all, but it isn't actually useful. Thankfully, we can go back inside the game and find this creatively named file that contains the majority of the game's loot tables. I'm going to simplify things quite a bit for the sake of the video, but the file is linked in the description for the people who want to look through it on their own. This is what a loot table in Apex actually looks like, but I'm going to represent them as nice pie charts for the sake of demonstration. These tables don't actually contain every item in the game. Instead, the big tables are divided into what I'm going to call subtables that spawn some loot as an example. Our medium tier loot zone has decided it wants to spawn an armor. It then looks to the subtable, which is rolled again to give us our final item, a level 3 shield. But wait, there's more. This is actually its own tiny subtable. Levels 1 and 2 only contain a single item, but level 3 contains 2. These subtables are the main way loot zones differ. Comparing two zones, we see that even though the armor spawn rate is almost the same, the armors that spawn are way higher quality. Just so you have them, here's a nice visual for the 3 loot tables that are responsible for the majority of ground loot in the game. I would recommend pausing the video if you want to get a better look at any of these. The only real difference besides the quality of the items is that low loot zones are completely unable to spawn survival items. This is actually practical knowledge. If I'm trying to get to Skyhook from Geyser and I want to find an evac tower to speed this process up, I know to only search these areas and not waste time checking everywhere else. That covers the majority of ground loot, but before we continue, I'll run through some of the more practical things we can take from the big file of loot tables. The cargo bots on Wall's Edge pull from these tables for each quality of item they drop. I've heard the superstition that it's better to shoot them on blue if you're specifically in need of batteries, for example, but that's not how it works. They spawn an item of every quality up to and including the one you shot it on. As a bonus fact, these are the paths that they travel along, and as far as I know, 11 spawn per game and 8 of those will have vault keys. The cargo bots in the Fight Night ring pull from these tables, notably missing armors, as it would feel really bad to have someone armor swap right before you get the final punch. These are the Marvin loot pools. Only the purple one is in the files, but I hit our poor buddy Marvin 100 or so times on both white and blue, and here's what I found. I will not be testing the gold loot pool simply because I do not want to. If you want healing, hit it on white. If you want scopes, hit it on blue, and if you want evacs or armors, hit it on purple. Yes, I am aware that a lot of those rarities don't match what it says on the Marvin. I do not know what you want me to do about that. The last ones I'll showcase are the tables for the Ring of Fire at Gauntlet and the gun shop in Big Mord. Again, the entire file is linked in the description. Now we get to talk about the special zones. These are areas on the map that someone at Respawn particularly likes for whatever reason. We're going to start off boring with POI Sniper. This is the table that these sniper towers on both Kings Canyon and Stormpoint use. It is also used for these pills on top of Trials, in the middle of Solar Array, and the catwalk on Launchpad, but not the one on Northpad. I assume they forgot to add it. As the name suggests, it can only spawn sniper or marksman weapons and their attachments, with the notable addition of the 1x Digi threat. I'm not sure why it's here, but I'm just not going to question it. These are worth checking even if you're not running a sniper, as all of the extended mags have increased odds of spawning. Next up are the pair referred to as POI High. Yes, that's different to normal high tier loot, and POI Ultra. You might know these as honeypots or god spawns, but we will be referring to them as their strictly scientific name, juicers. These are small loot zones that pull from extremely high quality loot tables. However, there are some differences between the two. POI Ultra is the better of the two. It can spawn any type of gold gear, including gold guns, and can be found below Dam Beast, inside these POIs on Broken Moon, at the bottom of Harvester, at the top of Pylon, this single spawn between the pills near Containment, this pill at the back of Docks, these 2 shacks near Runoff, below Oasis, and inside Elysium. POI High is POI Ultra's younger brother, but it's still way better than the loot you'll find in the surrounding area. The table is limited to only guns, healing, and armors, making these spawns ideal for hot drops. These locations are generally less obvious than Ultra spawns and include the middle pills of Mill, this cave by Cenote, specifically the south side of Barometer, this pill south of Cascades, and the center looting countdown. Finally, for this section, we have the explosive hold loot table. I don't know what I'm supposed to say here to make this interesting. That covers the majority of practical things we can learn about the loot system in Apex. There's also the smart loot system, but honestly, that could be its own video, so to end this one off, I'm going to share some of my favorite oddities and bugs with the game's loot system. I hope you found this video useful, and if you learned something, these are some fun buttons to press. When they shrunk the size of the Stormpoint map in Season 19, a lot of things got shifted around. However, the loot zones did not get shifted to accommodate for this. Now the POI High loot table in the middle of Mill only applies to half of the pills. This side giving you attachments is the giveaway that it's not pulling from the POI High loot pool. When they added Monument in place of Frag West, they never changed the loot zones, meaning only the Southwest is able to spawn survival items. This is where the old construction building was, and since its loot zone never got removed, it now applies to the loot that spawns in this area. If you want a chance to find evac towers looting Monument, make sure to loot down here, but honestly your odds are still not great. The Cascades loot zone is so big that it overflows onto this building specifically, meaning this one can spawn survival items while the ones around it never will. In the update that added this vault in a skyhook tunnel, an extra vault loot zone was defined over here. While no loot spawns here, we could reasonably assume this is where the vault was originally planned on being, and at some point it was changed to be in an area people would actually pass through. On Olympus, when Solar Array gets hot zoned, it overlaps and overwrites the vault loot in Icarus, defaulting it to the normal ground loot pool instead of its intended vault loot. Finally, the situation at Labs is interesting to say the least. The high quantity of overlapping zones for some reason confuses the game and spawns disproportionately more survival items than it should. I mean, just look at this. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found this useful.